I want people to hear this because you're talking about an agent that's operating at a very high level, like high level, the 1% of the 1%, let's call it, because it's true. Because very few agents get to that level or want even a business at that level. But what that allows you to do is have this mastery, this clarity over data, because you're just so in it that you really understand the minutia and the moves, which allows you to say, oh, this is bringing us into this kind of market. It's really starting to feel like 2010 again. And I hesitate in saying feels like the market is looking like 2010, because what you and I know after being in business for all these years, that we've got to get away from feels and actually dive into the data, especially when we're trying to have conversations with clients, whether they're buyers or sellers, because it's always in the transitional periods that people think you're selling them. You're just trying to tell them something to get them to act on something. But no, we're going to go over the data today. And this is something that might be very, very helpful for you as you go about having your conversations with your clients this week.
Yeah. Awesome. I couldn't agree more, man. Yeah, I mean, feeling is important, but you want to connect, stuff I do, right, with the ayahuasca and stuff is like connecting your head and your heart. So I can kind of feel what's going on, this fear, tariff talks, all this kind of stuff, the stock market, growth stocks dumping, Bitcoin going down. Like there's something going on, gold going up, like gold sending a signal. What is that signal? I think we can dive into some data, man. I think we talked about it a little bit last week about my buddy Joe Rosen, who tracks his numbers more acutely than anybody I know. Set his goals. This is how many conversations I got to have based, on what I want to make. But he based it on last year's numbers. So he's like, okay, I made this many calls. Had this many conversations. I had this many appointments set. I had this many appointments met. Like he tracks all this stuff. And he was back in the market in the 2010 market as well. And he's like, man, it kind of feels a little bit like 2010. He's like, I'm doing 38%. He tracks this stuff like so acutely. I'm doing 38% more dials and I'm getting 25% less appointments set and appointments met. So
let's
right
sit on that.
there,
Let's sit on that for a moment. Let's sit on that for a moment, because that's so impactful. And I want people to hear this because you're talking about an agent that's operating at a very high level, like high level, the 1% of the 1%, let's call it, because it's true. Because very few agents get to that level or want even a business at that level. But what that allows you to do is have this mastery, this clarity over data, because you're just so in it that you really understand the minutia and the moves, which allows you to say, oh, this is bringing us into this kind of market. Let me grab this tool bag that I haven't had to grab for a while, bring this to the front because I'm going to need it. I'm going to need this set of tools that you and I are going to discuss today, conversations, in order to get through what I see is coming. And that's what's so beautiful, because it gets away from, well, I think, or I feel, or I'm talking about over 2 or 3 transactions that happened, or a water cooler conversation. No, black and white, good stuff, which if you stick around, we're going to get into some of that. But that's what I really appreciate from that. What do you think?
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, and it's listening, right, to this person who's not just going, he's not a guy who's like complaining. He actually is saying he has a coach. This is kind of more of an accountability coach, but kind of keeps him on track. And his coach, he was like, he wasn't too thrilled with this. His coach is like, oh, it's the market. You're doing good. He's like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear the market. I want you to tell me you need to make more dials. You need to do this. You need to do this. Like because Joe came from a military thing, he's like, I don't want to blame, this. He's like, I want to be the master of my destiny, of my success. And I need you as a coach to not say, it's okay. It's just the market. I think you need to understand. I think the value of that is he understands his numbers, and he's also accountable to, hey, this is not working. So based on what my projections were I made this much money last year and this is how many dials I made. Hey, if I just increase my effort by 38%, I'll make 38% more money. And he's like, no. So because he's able to look at his numbers and also say, yeah, the market has shifted, things have turned. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? And I think that, what we're going to talk about here in a second with looking at data and understanding data, to your point, isn't like, well, you don't want to be in front of your customer going, oh, it's the tariffs. It's the, the high interest rates. It is certainly that is part of the fear. People don't know what's going on, but that's our job, is to show them what is going on based on the numbers.
And I love that you kind of finished with that in your thought, in that that's our job, which makes me always think about, especially in a changing landscape with technology, with the market, with et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What is the value of an agent at a time where there are a lot more agents doing zero transactions than I think I can recall? More agents in the business, in the industry, but producing zero in terms of transactions. What does this say about the value of a real estate agent? What creates the value of a real estate agent? Clearly, one of these things is what you're talking about right now, is having mastery over the data so you can best serve your client. But what thoughts does that trigger when I say, what is the value of a real estate agent, and why did all this matter?
Overarchingly, right now, especially, and one of the things I've always said to the agents and to myself, that pricing is 80% of marketing. I would say now it's probably 90% of marketing. So if it is 90% of what is going to help you sell your house. Now, great photos, video, getting it up to all these major sites, accessibility, this kind of stuff, of the ability for the agent to negotiate for you. These are all definitely things that are in that value that we provide. That being said, the numbers, so if we're talking about pricing being 80 or more percent of marketing, so can you do a market analysis that looks at that specific community well, right? It's related to this unit had updated kitchen, this unit is a bottom floor, all that kind of stuff, right, is very, very important. So it's important to understand how to do a good market analysis. And we do that every Monday with my group. We also look over the numbers I'm going to show you here. It's like, I go over, here's how you do a good market analysis. If somebody says, hey, I got a listing appointment, I'm like, as a leader, I'm like, all right, let's look at your CMA. Let me help you with that, so that you didn't miss anything. I can give you little tips and tricks. And that's why you want to have a good mentor or leader that you can bounce this stuff off of. But also understanding the macro picture. So we call it the micro picture, which is the community and type of property. And then the macro picture is, how do you stand in the landscape of that overall market? Single family home, townhome, condo, like where do you, and price range, like where do you stand in that picture when somebody goes, I have a $500,000 budget. I want to buy 2,000 square foot. I need a minimum of 2,000 square foot home. I want a minimum of this age. Okay, great. Where does that specific type of property fit within the overall market? Even if you're a buyer or a seller, because if you're a buyer, like, hey, I want to see that I'm in a buyer's market. Okay, great. I can go out and make offers. If you're a seller, you need to see that, like, hey, if I'm standing up against this wall of inventory, I need to be priced really well. And then I have great photos. I need a great agent that can help negotiate, make sure all the other stuff is good. So that's where I think our relevance and our value specifically comes into play.
Yeah, and one thing that I had gotten into a conversation with somebody who's thinking about, well, actually they have, I think they have their house on the market, and it's a friend of a friend. So, we have kind of the kitchen table conversations with my wife, and she said, yeah, they haven't been able to sell it. And I've been in the house, so I know what the house is like. And this is something that maybe we haven't talked about collectively as real estate agents recently, because again, it wasn't really a part of the market. But when they bought the house not too long ago, about 3 years ago, new construction, they went to town with upgrades. And over the years, they've just added and added and added and added and added. It's that proverbial, and we've known this for ages, the nicest house on the block. And you rarely want to have the nicest house on the block, especially in a community where it's very cookie cutter. So it's much easier or much clearer to kind of figure out the price because they're also similar. But this one's so loaded up. It's the kind of loading up that you would discourage someone if they were going to buy something and sell it relatively in a short time, because you're not going to get the return that you made as an investment. And if you price yourself out too far, you're not going to sell it. So, an example like that is so clearly more black and white, but I found that interesting because they're definitely succumbing to the fact that the market has shifted, plus they over improved. Do you see
Yeah,
that
I can
coming
show
in?
you
See
some
that
stuff.
coming into play, right?
Oh, 100%. Like, and also like, dude, this is a different, like where we are right now as of February 27th. This is a different market right now than it was 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Not 6 months ago, 3 months ago. So when people are like, oh, my friends sold their house for this, or they sold this down the block, last year. It's like, this is a different market.
And that's what, and that's,
so that's what we can.
no, go ahead. Finish your thought, please.
I was just going to say that's where we can, I'm just kind of front running. That's where we can go and look at this data. I'm pulling some of it up here. We already looked at some of it, but like I can go back 15 years. I can go back 5 years to show you, we can go back 3 months too and all that. But like, it's just, what's relevant and valuable is kind of right now. What is the market that you're in right now?
And even just as you saying that, and before we get in, because we're about to kind of double click into that data, so let's get that ready. But the timeliness hasn't been more important because, again, as I said earlier, it's we're in that change. It's not like we're right in the middle of that change, and that change in perception, market prices, how we operate, how we service that listing, the decisions we make at the front, the negotiation that happens in the middle. All of those things are in the midst of change. And that, to me, kind of earlier to our earlier kind of question that we were posing to each other is that mastery of knowledge to be able to shift how we sell a piece of property is ultimately the value of a really good, strong real estate agent. Being able to take all of those elements that are all kind of twisting at one time to position you, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, and Mr. or Mrs. Buyer too, into the right position to take advantage of the market as it is and do it the right way. So yeah, let's double click into that. What you got?
Okay. So let me share my screen here. Okay. So the first thing that I want to show everybody here is an overall picture of, this is the last 14 months. So we got 125 down here. So January of 25, and you can go over here to January of 24, just to look back a year, Eddie, right? So this is the active properties. So you don't need to be an astrophysicist to see that this is going up, right? So the active inventory has gone up collectively, right? The pendings, this is the black line, right? So the black line is what goes under agreement. So typically one of the things, and this is something you could talk to a customer about. So I'm talking to you, or I'm talking to the audience, how I would convey this to a customer. So you go, and you have to be either know this because you have someone that's a mentor, or you have to have learned it like we did, you and I did, Eddie. Like, hey, the thing that during season, January, February, March, that's when the snowbirds come in. We have a lot more activity. This October and November, is slow. It's holidays. People aren't buying as much. So it's not a surprise that the pendings are lower in here, right? And then the pendings go up. And as the pendings go up, there's a there's a relationship, a direct relationship between the closings. So this is 2,600, 3,300, 42. Like it goes up, right? Kind of stays level through the summer, right? And then third quarter, it starts to drop. And even into fourth quarter, it drops. So again, so this is something that you can show a customer of like, I understand seasonality, right? So that's an important thing. I think somebody goes, wow, this person has some experience. You're able to like look at this from an experience standpoint. So let's move on to the next thing, which is this is the average price per square foot sold. So this bounces around. So it's like not like you say to somebody, okay, your property is there's no limits here on price range, square footage, anything. It's just single family homes. So, but this doesn't mean that your property is worth $501 a square foot. We don't do it like that. That's what your comparative market analysis should give you a better idea. But this gives you an idea of the overall, how is this price per square foot going? Now, we might say, oh, look at January, like that bounced up. Yes, it did, but we had a lot of this stuff bounce up and down. So if we look back here, 124, 125, 501, 464, you say, well, it's appreciated that much in a year. Not really. It's more of the average of what's happened in here. And you had this spike. I wouldn't be surprised if this drops down next month. The February numbers don't come out till March. Okay. So again, it kind of just shows them like the market's just kind of gone sideways. You don't see it ascending up. You see it bouncing around. And if you were to compile all of these, I would probably say the average is probably in here. It's probably less than what it was, and you could run those numbers. I'm doing this obviously in a kind of a just more broader sense. So this again shows somebody, hey, values have kind of just gone sideways. And in some instances in the third quarter of last year actually went down. Okay. So that's another good thing you can show somebody. Let's look at this. So this is the original listing price to sale price. So this tells somebody, hey, on average, in January, people were getting 90% of their original listing price to sale price. Now, I don't know if this graph has come up yet. It did. Okay, good. Because I will come back to this here in a second. Just kind of to show you that this is kind of the COVID world back in here, right? Average days on the market, original listing price to sale price, and so forth. But let me bounce back to this. Okay, so this is days on the market. So you don't need to be a NASA physicist to see that the days on the market has definitely gone up. Yeah, it bounced around a little bit, went down in here, but it went up. So you're just seeing properties are staying on the market longer. So what are you doing? What are you saying to somebody there? Like, hey, expect that you're probably not going to get close to your asking price, right? Expect that you're going to be on the market a little bit longer unless you really, really price it aggressively, or not even aggressively, properly, given the month supply of inventory, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about here. So you see, you're telling the story and you're showing them the data so that they can connect the story with data. It helps if you have C personalities, engineer types, D personalities, drivers like me are like, show me the numbers, man. Like, just get to it. I don't want to hear your story. Like, but the D's like it too. The S's makes them feel better, like those stable people of like, wow, this person's got me. Right? This person's got me. Now, if you're dealing with an I personality, they're going to probably be trying to talk over you, tell you about their next door neighbor's dog and all that stuff too. So this stuff, you got to be careful about who you're presenting it to and how you're presenting it. But anyways, back to the point here. This is the month supply of inventory. So under 3 months of inventory is a seller's market. Between 3 and 6 months of inventory is a neutral market. And over 6 months of inventory is a buyer's market. So what are we in? You can see that it bounced around here. This is a collective. Now, if I went up here and I put in a certain price point and I put in a certain age of when it was built, this is going to change a little bit. So this is why we also need to understand how to put it in, so we can gather data that really illustrates the value of the property and the month supply of inventory that you're sitting in. So what does this tell us right here? Dude, we're in a buyer's market. This isn't me going, well, I think we're in a buyer's market. It's like, no, technically, buyer's market is over 6 months of inventory. Here it is. Here it is. So you need to be priced. Well, it's not like, oh, we want to price it here and see if someone will come and make us an offer. It's like they've got a lot of other stuff to look at. Why would they come over to your property if they've got all these other properties to look at? Time is valuable. Like they've got other stuff they can look at. So
Hey, Alex, can
I
I
don't know where
can I
we
ask
should
you
go from there.
something? How do you handle that specifically in times that it's happened? And have you ever found yourself saying thanks but no thanks, shaking the hands and walking out the door for something that's completely unrealistic and is not market aligned?
For me personally, in the past I didn't, because I just was like, if I get a listing, it's money in the bank. I think I told that story a little bit last week on the agent. I'm really good with this stuff now, and I haven't had to walk away from one yet. But what it helped was the agent on my team. I had this agent went over. She was going to get her first listing. Wrap around to that story, I think from last week. She understood the data, right? She understood the inventory situation. And what she was looking at, dude, this is a condo on the island, which is on the beach. And so she was able to go into that specific area, and it was 16 months of inventory. 16 months. And as her comparative market analysis, she believed that it was $100,000 overpriced. So you're $100,000 overpriced because you want to make as much money as you can. Was the seller. And you're up against 16 months of inventory. So she felt that, and we had a conversation. It was a long day for me, buddy. I went in. She was in the office making dials at 7:00 at night, and she's like, "Hey, do you have some time?" I'm like, "I have time for you. I've got enough. Not like I'm tired. It's like this is my job. I'm your partner." She's like, "I'm just not feeling right about this. I don't know what's going on." I said, "Break it down for me." So she went down. I was like, "What do you think it really should be priced at?" She's like, "I comped it out at this. He wants this." And I said, "Okay, why do you think it was that?" And she did, hey, it has this patio and it's got a boat slip and this kind of stuff. And I was like, "Okay, but you still are 100,000 over." She goes, "Yeah." And then I dug a little bit deeper and I said, "Well, your feeling is, I can tell you this, wisdom, just my experience giving to you the wisdom that can potentially save you time and money, is that if you take this listing," and I said, "if you want to take it, you can take it." Because I believe that money teaches us a lot of things if we listen. It's usually the most costly thing. But she was so sweet because she was like, "I don't want to waste the team's money." And I was like, "That's great. I appreciate that. What I don't want to do is for you to waste time. So if you take this overpriced listing, it's going to be the 15-minute conversation here, the half an hour conversation there. Why hasn't anybody come? Why isn't anybody making offers? You go into price changes, but you didn't establish this conversation in the beginning. You got to have this conversation in the beginning for them, not just for you to get a commission, for them, and flush out the motivation. Is there a high motivation? If there isn't a high motivation, they're going to sit. They're not going to price change because they haven't got a good reason to move, right? So that's why we do the role play every day. Motivation, most important thing. What is the motivation? And she didn't end up taking the listing, man. And so it saved me, admin time, photos, all this stuff. And I think it saves her time, that she doesn't have to have that weight of like, why isn't it selling? I don't want to have that price change conversation. I don't want to have that price change conversation. A, because they're abrasive or with it or whatever. B, like there's 15, 20 minutes of your time that you could be prospecting for somebody that's ready, willing, and able. These people are kind of ready, kind of willing, or kind of able. They're able, but they're really not willing. So if they don't hit all three of those criteria, it's not money in the bank. You're actually taking time and money out of the bank by taking it.
I love that. I love that so much. It's such a level of maturity, though, for an agent to get to that place, and experience. And maybe you do take the lumps over your head a few times until someone gets it, or you have the leadership like your team has with you to give them that insight for them to sit on and be like, "Oh, I see what he means." Because yes, at the end of the day, it's costing you your money, your time, and your time is your most valuable asset that you have in this industry, in this business. because you do want to get closer and faster and more aligned quickly with those that do have that right motivation, because that is certainly one of the biggest components. And when we say someone that's motivated to sell, it doesn't mean that someone's hurting to sell or they have to or they're going to give the house away. No, it's a level of, I'm ready and I'm open to the right offer and I'm ready to sell it, because I'm going to go off to X, Y, and Z. My wife and I need to downsize. My kids moved. We want to go by the kids. I took a new job. I've got to go. So I love that little breakdown you just went through right now in terms of kind of what that thought process looks like. But I mean, back to the data. Were you still going through some of that?
I wanted to show something else here that I think is a very important thing.
Could it be wrong?
And so it is, I think it's relevant. I do. So I want to just maybe show you too how I can kind of move this data around and you can use it. Like this is something called TrendGraphics. This is a relatively costly program, $700 a month, but it's like, if you know how to use it, this $700 is going to save you a lot of time, right? Now, some people don't want to learn how to use it. And it's like, there's the friction around that. They avoid it, whatever. But so anyways, this is where you do kind of like almost an MLS search. So I can search different MLSs. Okay. So you integrate those. I can search different areas. So this is what I was talking about. This is all of it, but I could go into a specific area in Palm Beach County, right? I could go into, okay, I just want to look at all of St. Lucie County, or I want to go into a specific area in St. Lucie. See what I'm saying? So I wanted to show this part because I think it's important of how granular you can get with this, okay? I'm going to keep it open. You could do price point, right? You can also do the type of property. So what I wanted to show you here was the difference between, and I already did this search, you're getting a sneak peek here, of the condos and villas and townhomes, which is more dramatic than the single family home. Okay. So the next thing that I can do is that I can actually print this off from my customer, or I can save it. I could put it onto, social media. I use this stuff for my YouTube videos. So anybody out there, I think this is a great thing you can do to create a YouTube video. And get it, edited and so forth. I'll just keep this, doesn't matter. You can save it, right? And so then it comes in as a PDF file. So you can send this over to your editor, right? And now they're using a PDF rather than a screen share, and they can hover over things that you're talking about and so forth. So anybody out there that's looking to do YouTube, and then what do? You email this to your database. This is the overall picture of what's going on. It could be relevant for somebody out there that's looking to do YouTube. But back to kind of the numbers here, right? So I kept this very open, price range, bedroom, bathroom, just very, very open, right? So again, don't need to be an NASA scientist, don't need to be Einstein to go, this is going up, like to the left and up. This is number go up. Bitcoin would do this, but S&P and that, money supply, this stuff goes up and to the right, okay? So again, I don't need to get super granular here, but you can see 1 year back, 24,000, 36,000. So you have 12,000 more units on the market in 1 year. Now the pendings also 125. This was 3,698, 3,264. So roughly 400 less properties went pending. Furthermore, 2277, good number. 2706. That's the close. 500, roughly 500 less units closed. So you see, this stuff is really like, I'm not telling you something. I'm showing you something.
And visually, it's
this
very
is undeniable.
Visually, it's striking
Yeah.
too. Before you even dive into the numbers, it's just it's clear. I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not coming from this place of, well, again, it's tariffs and there's a lot more units on the market. What, how many more units on the market? Like, I don't want to hear, I trust you, maybe real estate agent, but the way I'm going to trust you is you're showing me something that I don't understand. You're helping me understand something that I don't understand. Now, this is pretty dramatic. This is very dramatic. Like you went from 124, 125 right there. That did go up, but man, most of this, I would say, if you did the average, is probably down here. Again, you could pump all these numbers in, and that would be helpful if you went over to that customer and said, look, values have actually dropped, period. End of story. Again, the days on market. This shows 87 days. If we went back and you had the single family homes, I think it was like 12 more days on the market. What is this, bro? This is like 25 more days. It's almost a month more days on the market than this time last year. Pretty compelling, right? People are getting 90% of their original sale price to asking price, but look, this is kind of going down. So you got to price properly. And then this is the real shocker, bro. We were talking about 2010 earlier. Depending on the market that you were in 2010, we were looking at between 18 and 24 months of inventory. What is this doing? This is going up. I mean, in fact, we were in a buyer's market in condos last year at this time. We were in a buyer. Now the single family home was not. It was in a neutral market. It's trending up, and it's in a buyer's market now. But dude, we were in a buyer's market. We weren't even in a neutral market once since this time last year.
Yeah, let that sit with everyone. That's so incredibly telling. And just the idea of us associating 2010 with today, granted, it's not meant to be necessarily concerning, but it needs to bring up your attention up so that you could communicate this to the people you're trying to serve, because it's clear. It's not a seller's market anymore, period.
Yeah, and I say stuff like, look, I'm not trying to scare you. It's not my thing here to scare you. My job here is to tell you the truth. And this, you can't, 1 + 1 is 1. 1 + 1 is 2. That's math. It's undeniable. This is the truth. And that's what people need to hear, is the truth.
Well, I hope this was helpful, because that's what we were sharing in this conversation is to how to have those conversations with the truth. So hopefully, mostly realtors that are licensed and are part of an association have some access to some of these tools. They're all a little bit different, but if you have any questions about some of the stuff we went over, you want to leave it in the comments, please, because I think there's a lot of some nuance there that could be helpful in terms of how do you prepare your conversations with your potential clients, whether they're buyers or sellers. What kind of data should you put forth that to them in those conversations, and also helping identify. I know we kind of touched on it, but helping identify who you're meeting with, because that's super important too, to understand what that type of person is. Before you just go in blurting, 14 charts in front of them and just blurting out numbers that just don't connect with them. So that's probably another great conversation for us to have, is identifying who you're talking to. How do they learn? How do they interpret? Maybe tying in some conversation about what their motivation is, identifying their motivation, so that when you do maybe go round 2, or if you're really good and proficient, you're able to quickly pivot and give them the information in the way they need to see it on the spot, would be really, I think, valuable.
Yeah, I appreciate that you added that last piece there in the end, because again, it's training on stuff like this. Like when I first got on this, man, I was like, wow. I wasn't a statistics. I actually did well in statistics, but my point was I'm not great with technology. I was like, oh, what is this? But the more that I used it, the easier it got to understand it. And then I didn't have me. Now I do it with the team every Monday. Every Monday, we go over this stuff. This is how you use this. This is how you talk about it. This is how you convey the story. It's not like you're telling a story. It's like the numbers tell the story, but you have to be able to interpret the numbers so that you can convey the story of what's going on, what the truth is. So lastly, into that, the morning role play that we do, man, one of the things we also do in there is what is that person? So when we play the other person in the role play, what personality type was that person? Were they a D? Were they an I? Were they an S? Were they a C? Are you speaking to them in the language that they're going to receive in. So when you're on the phone with somebody, like you're writing stuff down of like, I feel a little C in there. They said they're an engineer. They said they're a banker. They said they're a teacher. They said they're a CEO of an organization. That's going to kind of tell you where they are. And if they're an I, they're just going to be talking about everything and be all over the shop. And that's okay. Like it's not bad or good or, superior or whatever. It's just we're all different. So understanding people's personality types helps you not just go in there and just throw a bunch of this data in front of an S. Like you want to build that relationship, like, and say, hey, Mrs. This or Mr. That, like, okay, building the rapport, building a relationship, making them feel safe, and then going, can I show you some numbers here that I think would help? But if it's an I, if it's a C, be like, hey, I'd like to get into some really good numbers here so that you can make an educated decision. That's how a C receives. They want lots of data because their biggest fear is to make a bad decision. So these are the people out there like, man, they want to see so much, or they want to know so much. It's like they're a C personality. So you better learn how to speak to them, or they're just going to be like, we don't know, or I don't have enough information. Can you get me this? Can you get me that? Like, come prepared with this, understanding that's how they receive information, and you're going to be able to help them more, which is, going to increase your sales.
I love that, man. I really get that's probably one of the sweeter spots for me in terms of this industry and this business and how to be successful is everything you just described. Is not opening up a lockbox, not showing them the third bedroom, not preparing a contract, not making sure the pictures are taken. It's connecting with someone at the start, understanding who they are, how they need to receive information, you taking all the information we are responsible to provide them with so that they can also make a good decision about what they need to do. But just be able to wrap that and understand it and just that whole, all that nuanced stuff is where I think there's so much opportunity and where a lot of success lies with real estate agents today.
Couldn't agree more, man.
Well, with that, I hope we you all found this really helpful. I think it's really timely in terms of the market. There's a lot of market conversations right now, but this one's really kind of a specific and takes a deep dive as to how to handle it. If you want to stay on top of these kinds of strategies up to the minute, because Alex and I are committed to recording the Relevant Agent podcast every single week, we encourage you to subscribe and hopefully give us a thumbs up on this video. And as always, my friend, we'll see you all on the next one.
Thanks, brother.